I'm an archaeologist and I work for a museum. And in Hungary, the museum should participate in the education, the public education as well. And they perform not only research, but they have to disseminate the result of science and social science and natural science as well. So we were very happy to compile a curriculum for young students, young schoolgirls and boys, and even for small children from kindergarten, because they like to come to the museum and to have extra lessons. And the government tried to encourage the museum to take bigger part in the education, in these extra lessons, because these extra lessons can be not so strictly following the rules of the curriculum, so they can be complex and not show only one subject but several subjects, so they can be quite complex. And now I have compiled for you a series of slides which we use generally for our lessons. And for different ages, it means I will tell you when I just skip these slides because the children are too young, or when I start to explain more about it. And all the lessons in Hungary contains creativity as well. I mean creativity with handworks. So it means that we not only talk about, give a lecture to the students who are sitting in silence, but they have to do something with their hands as well. At the end of the lessons, I will show you how the young students from elementary schools can do something about it. And of course, with those things or with those creativity work, we also try to disseminate the result of the museum. So we developed thematic days for offering the schools. And the thematic days mean that the children can spend almost the whole day in the museum. So sometimes the children of the schools outside the town, they come to the town as an excursion. So they spend quite a whole day in the museum. And we can do many things together. And during these thematic days, in these thematic days, we have developed something about astronomy, or rather cultural astronomy. You will see that how complex way we can teach the children. And I must emphasize that the cultural astronomy can offer an excellent chance for promoting or for disseminating or for teaching indigenous knowledge and in the scientific knowledge at the same time in a very, very balanced way. And even we use the indigenous knowledge to color the dryness of the scientific explanation or interpretation. So you can see how we can do it in a very elementary level and in a higher level as well. And at the same time, we developed a basic range of how to express. So we developed such a slideshow which we can enrich very easily if the teacher requests something special. Because time to time, if they come more often to the museum, they don't want to hear the same lecture, or they don't want to participate in the same one. So this time we discuss with the teacher which part should we emphasize more, which is upon their request. And at the same time, we always, at the end of the school, we always have a workshop with the teachers who are our partners and discuss how to improve our lessons or our cooperation in this field. And our experience is that the children or the youngsters love this museum, school lessons very, very much. They enjoy it very, very much. And we have many possibilities how to make the lessons more interesting. As an archaeologist, and I work with prehistoric material, my favorite activity or starting activity that I give the copy of special artifacts to the children. First of all, to touch it, because they like to touch everything, so they are allowed to touch these object which they believe that it is archaeological object. And at the same time, I can ask, can you tell me what you can see in this picture? What do you think, what are these? And so on. So it means that the children can use their very, very wide imagination. What can they see, for example, on the left sky is what they can recognize, or what they believe what they can see in this object. And certainly I have selected those archaeological finds which, according to my belief, contain some common relation to the archaeoastronomy, or at least to the sky knowledge. And we can have the discussion like this. And then we start to talk about the sun, because they believe that they also sun symbol that they can see in this object, and I can talk about how these objects were manufactured and so on. And then I can show you several other sun symbols, and then we can turn to the motion of the sun. Do you know how the sun is moving in the sky? And we can discuss that how we can observe the sun during the day, during the year, and so on. So we can give them some scientific knowledge about the sky. And at the same time, we can remember that there are folk songs about the sky. There are the kindergarten children learn very short and very lovely song-like poems, folk poems, which actually a song which evoke the sun. So they know quite well, so we can song together. If they are very small, they love the song, so we can song together. And do you know any other songs which is about the sun and the moon and so on? And I know that they should know it, so of course we agree with the teacher, so we can sing the song together, and then we can continue. And then if they are a bit older, I can talk about the excavation, how these objects or artifacts comes out from the ground, and I can show there how an excavation look like, and interpreting or explaining what are these holes on the ground, and so on and so on. And if they are elder, they go to the upper classes of the elementary school or secondary school, we can talk about this diagram, which is a magnetic diagram of the surface, which shows quite well what kind of buildings, what kind of feature can be seen on the ground without excavating it. Because we cannot excavate everything, but it doesn't mean that we cannot investigate the ground. So we can talk about how many scientific methods are to investigate the ground and to find out what they contain scientifically. If they are also older, we can talk about what these rondels, these circular earthwork might have been used. And we can talk about that, like it might have been used for watching the sun or observing the sun in certain days of the year, and we can talk about the seasonal calendar and the festivals which they might have been used. And certainly we can show several other artifacts which might have represented the moon. And then it starts again, and we can talk about the scientific interpretation of the motion of the moon, and showing down the different phases and talking about it in a very scientific way. And then, if they are older and they already know how the sun and moon and the system works, we can ask, do you know where is the error in this plate? And I hope they find it. Maybe you know where is the error in this plate. If you know about the motion and the motion of the sun and the moon. If we assume that this big, large yellow disk is the sun and the crescent is the moon, what might trigger? Astronomers should know it. The others, it's not compulsory to know it. As the sun is a star, so it has its own light. It's a fire actually. But the moon is not a fire, it is just lighted. We can see it because the sunshine hit it. And it means that it always should be in the, so the sun is this side of the moon, so the moon should be in the opposite way. If we are scientists and we make this play, but those people who did it, they just represent the most important element of the sky, the most important element for them. So that's why I think that this which is quite world famous, because we know it's absolutely that it's from the Bronze Age. It means that it is about 3,500 years old, and because the other artifacts which were buried with it. Remember the first picture of the just to this sky disk was buried with other artifacts as well, so not we could date not the sky disk but the other artifacts, because the archaeologist has a methodology how to date the different artifacts, and we can date with the swords and the other one which period they belong to. And that's why I believe that this sky disk belong to, this sky disk is about 3,500 years old. So, and then we try to find out together what other elements can be seen in this sky map. And certainly they think quite at once that the dots are for the stars. And what about these small groups of the stars? What it can be? And then we continue. I forgot, I made a skip here, because this time when we talk about the moon, for example, or the sun as well, we also mentioned that in the indigenous old knowledge, sun and moon was also used for magic. So you can see the magical signs everywhere, and you can see that these signs were used as an amulet or to prevent something, and especially for those people who made their living with cultivation of the soil. How much they use the sun and the moon phase, different phases during the cultivation. So we talk about the old customs and the old indigenous knowledge, which we don't use anymore actually in the Carpathian Basin in Hungary, but we should know about it. And then if we go to the stars, I also show them some other different artifacts with the stars, and talk about the stars. That the stars are very interesting because people believe that they make different pictures. They create different pictures in the figures in the sky, in the night sky. So I must talk about that these pictures can be different for different people, I mean for different social groups. And then we discussed the most well-known constellation which can be seen from the Carpathian Basin. and we talk about it, that they are real, that there is real relation between these stars or not. So we can discuss the scientific interpretation of the constellation. And then we can return also to the folklore, because I'm generally telling them or read them the old Hungarian tale of the most important constellation, because they should know about it, that how the old people believed why these constellations were in the sky. And to show that this is Hungarian, but this is the heritage of the Hungarian legend, but the other people have different tales about the sky. So I often read them another, a very different one. I love North American Indian sky also, that's why I often read them about it and show them that as many people are in the world, as many tales are in the sky, so it is different. And how these constellations were used, and so on. And certainly we can talk about the Pleiades, because we have several depictions from different periods of the Pleiades, because it's very interesting. And when we talk about the sky, we must talk about the certain feature of folk astronomy. And what the most characteristic one is that it can be different. It depends on the geographical position and depends on which land is around us. And the Carpathian Basin is not a big basin, but there are flatlands and there are mountains. And the ethnographers who investigated the sky lore of these people could prove that those who live in the flatland has richer sky lore. Those who live in the mountains, it's not so rich as the flatlands one. It's natural because the mountains cover the certain part of the sky. Then we must talk about it that the sky, the folk astronomy, it is not only astronomical, it is not only about the astronomical events according to our present scientific way of thinking, because astronomy, according to our present definition, it is outside from the Earth. So it is about the entities of the space. Sun, moon, it is not on the Earth, but the folk astronomy contains the atmospherical phenomena as well. So when they talk about the sky, or talked about the sky, they believe that the rainbow and the clouds and many other atmospherical phenomena which are beautiful, they were also the part of the sky. And that's why the folk astronomy is also about them. So it says about them. And I always show them this beautiful Skidipone Indian star map, which contains, beside the stars, there contains this and that contains the sunrise and the sunset atmospherical phenomena. When you can see red or purple arc along the eastern and western horizon. And I believe that it is a separate celestial phenomenon, a separate celestial entity. And when we talk about the atmospherical phenomena, I show these pictures to them, which they like very much, because these phenomena can be observed from the Carpathian Basin. So I show them which can observe. And we discuss, what do you think, what is this? What can you see in the first picture, the second picture, and third picture, and so on. So certainly the first picture is the aurora, yes, the second one. Eclipse, yeah, the third one. It's the moon, and the moon phases actually, and the fourth one. What?
The eclipse.
Eclipse, but it is a moon eclipse. So when, yeah, it's a moon eclipse, you know, the sun, the moon does not disappear when when it is an X-lab, but it can turn into very red. So that's it. There are very good legend, or not, I don't know how to express these, about the eclipses in the folklore. The next one, the comet. The next one, meteor. Then we can talk about, at the same time, we can also talk, I can explain the scientific interpretation of these phenomena. So it depends on the age and how much we can talk about. This next one.
Is that what they call an ice crystal ring?
Well, I don't know the English. Actually, the English, correct English, that we call it halo. 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 And it was taken in Hungary, so it's a beautiful. And that one.
Would that be jet streams?
Yes, yes. So it's the Bronze Age people couldn't see it because it is our base result. And certainly the next one we know it, and this one. And with this beautiful cloud and light interaction, I always show because I'm sure that the old people also noticed when this beautiful phenomenon, when they could see the light actually in the air. And that's a tornado, which unfortunately was also taken in Hungary once. So this is also a possibility for them to give them some natural scientific knowledge besides the weather knowledge of the people. And we can talk about the rainbows, the clouds, and the sunshine and sunrise, which I put this Bronze Age stylist and show that these long golden arc, and there is missing. Here it must have been represented, Pasztor represented the sunrise and the sunset sky. And other celestial phenomena, I try to show you some artifacts as well. Then we talk about the weather lore, because the weather lore is quite a big part of the ethnoastronomy, and we talk about the customs or the heritage, what the people do to evoke the rain when they need it, and so on, how they were dressed, and there might have been some archaeological finds which might have been the toolkit of a magic person whose job was to do it, to evoke the rain or to make some other magical activity. And we can talk about the cosmology, how the old people believed the world were built around them in the old days, and I also show them many beautiful artifacts, because the Carpathian Basin is extremely rich in beautiful artifacts during the Bronze Age, which might have some relation to cosmology, but of course it is not the topic of this presentation now. So just show you. And we can discuss it, we can talk about tales, which is about the world around us. We can read legend, we can read the literature about it. We can talk about the intercultural activities during the old times and now times and so on. And when I mentioned that we always do something with our hands, especially for the younger students, there are several tasks which they might have to do, but we give them quite big freedom how to solve the different tasks. For example, that when we talk about the stars, first, if they are older and then the youngest, we give them paper stars and ask them to make a constellation what you know. And they try to make something which they know or they remember. And unfortunately, the youngsters has a tendency to forget about the stars, so they are not so, generally the youngsters are not so interested in them, but after that we teach them, they become quite interested. So the next time when they return the next year, they are already remember what they heard in these museum lessons. Or we, for example, we made this is a arm ring, which you could see it is in golden, and it is covered in beautiful star-like symbols. We give them this paper, and everybody can create their own star arm ring, and then put some leather string into it. They can wear it. They love it. So we do it with different artifacts that we make them of paper and give them, and they can continue to decorate, or they can continue to do it. Or we can make pots also, and they try to decorate as much, or in that way they could see in the other archaeological artifacts. So there are many ways how to involve the children in a creative way during the lesson. And when the lesson is quite long, I mean, for example, half a day, certainly we don't talk so long, but we song, we read some text, we make something with their hands and so on, or explaining something or asking them. So we never give just a lecture, but we always try to push them to ask and to communicate to each other. As I did, do you know what this is, and so on. Why do you think, why it is black, why it is blue, and so on. So children love these kind of lessons because they are very communicative. And they don't have to sit silent, but they can talk to each other and we ask. So thank you for that.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah?
Some of the artifacts that you showed before you had associated with particular transient phenomena like halos. I'm just curious as to what kind of, just from the archaeological perspective, what evidence is there to show that those relate to those phenomena? So I don't know if there's any ethnographic evidence or anything, because I know in a lot of places we're all familiar with people making claims between two things that are pretty far-fetched. So I was just kind of curious as to...
Yeah, unfortunately, the biggest weakness of the prehistoric archaeology is that there is no written sources. So actually we don't know. Just we try to offer interpretation for them. And certainly we are happy if somebody can offer something else, or maybe. But there are not so many possibilities what such an object can represent. I remember, I think you are talking this one.
Yeah, that was one.
Yeah. Actually, these are pendants which they wear somehow, actually jewels. There are many jewels similar like this, and some of them similar to a wheel. And of course we know which period they come from. And if it comes from that period, because they couldn't know about the spoke wheel, so it can't be the symbol of the wheel, for example. And these are, for example, are older, so not that old. And not more. So we try to offer interpretation certain things, and I myself, I am absolutely convinced that the ethnoastronomy and absolutely give evidence that how much people were interested in the sky. And it means, that, and I can find it in many ethnographical records, that they were interested. A bit different way, and it doesn't matter that why they were interested, but they were interested. And the celestial phenomena had a very strong influence on them. We can show it in almost every period of the human history. So that's why I feel entitled to offer such an interpretation. But of course, if there will be something new, such as science, so it can.
Do modern people now use these same designs with that interpretation? I mean, whether or not, I mean, it looks exactly like a halo. So the question is, do people nowadays take that and wear these, representing like a halo, for example? You know,
there are some ancient symbols which survived, and they are very, very interesting and exciting to study them. But the problem with the symbols is that the meaning can change when the time is changing and so on. Why they kept the same structure, actually I don't really know, but maybe in that time it was a very strong positive symbol. I mean, they believe that it helped them if they have it or they glory. And with this interpretation that some of these strange symbolic jewels might have represented certain phenomena in the sky. Actually, it is my interpretation because the others don't give an interpretation at all. But I think that by the symbols return and keep their structure for a long time, it means that it must have been something important for them. And we know that these, so the traditional people were thinking in an analogous way. So it means that if they started to dig in the soil and they found, after a while they found some water, they believe that the whole soil, the whole earth is floating on the surface of the water because they found water and they made a big hole. Of course, not in a desert, but especially in the Carpathian Basin, there is lots of water and so on. So I'm sure that the sky somehow had an influence on that. And it shows in the jewels, and the other jewels. I showed you how many jewels we have decorated with symbols. I mean, yeah, these are. I'm sure that these are clouds, and it's no doubt that these are clouds. I think it was later. Yeah. Now, you can see, for example, so I think the most natural interpretation that these are stars or something which has a connection in the sky. Because if you ask the children to draw a sun or the moon, they always draw what they think they see in the sky with their own eyes, without understanding its scientific background. What they see, and it was the same. And I checked quite a lot of ethnographic material and tried to test how those people were thinking about when they made these artifacts or tools. And it's a bit similar. So what they see, they depict it.
Yeah, I have a question about another interpretation question. The Bronze Age disc, if you're teaching them that there's an error, you're imposing the notion that that's a diagram of the relationship between the moon and the sun. Well, in fact, there are two moons on that, and all those stars. That's not a simultaneous, it's not a picture of the sky. It's not simultaneous.
Yes, yes. That's the problem, and if I want to be fair, when I write a scientific paper about it, I must give the other interpretation that this can be also the full moon, not only the sun, but it can be also the full moon as well. I don't think that when traditional people depict the sky, they generally depict what they want to see in it or what they think it belongs to the sky. So they quite often don't depict the real picture. They don't draw the real picture of the sky, what they can see in the reality. When I showed you the Skidipone Indians, there are very few constellations which similar to those which we know now and can be recognized, because they depicted what they wanted, they depicted what they believed important. So the big cross are not for the brightest sky, They are for those sky which were important for that tribe. And they are sometimes quite faint. So the traditional way of thinking is a bit different. So that's why I think that these sky discs actually represented the most important element of the sky, those elements which were important for them. And I used as analogies the shamanic drum, which are depicted. And you can see that they never depict the, I think there is somewhere, I hope there is one. Ah yeah, it's here, yeah. So when the shaman when the shaman makes his drum, they often put decoration or not decoration. They often put important element for the drum, which generally reflect his or her worldview. It means that they put important things important for them, which they put on. So that's why I think this sky disc actually reflects the worldview of the maker, not the actual elements of the star. I mean not at the same time, because the sun and moon like this cannot be seen or rarely seen. Sometimes can, but rarely seen in this way. But this is not for the children, because of course we don't give them such interpretation. Just try to ask them to recognize something.
Great. Well, it is tea time, so if you want
Yeah.
to continue